Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this 16th class of the Fundamentals curriculum in the Education Center of B'nai Baruch. My name is William Jackson. It's the first time we've had the opportunity to be together. I'm an instructor in the Education Center and have been for many years now. I generally teach a class in the intermediate section and also in the graduate section called Structure of Creation. It's a class where we look from a technical standpoint, if you might say, almost a scientific standpoint, at how reality actually is structured. We're going to look at that question tonight, too, from a little different perspective. And this class is really probably one of the most fundamental classes in all of Kabbalah. None else besides him. We're going to delve into it pretty deeply here together. We'll try to answer your questions, but I have a warning, a request perhaps for all of you. We're running very short-handed tonight, and thus if your question doesn't get asked right away, please be patient with us. There's me teaching, and generally you see two people or more teaching, but tonight it's just me. We have all of the other broadcast centers in the Education Center doing other duties tonight. And in fact, your class was to come from New York, I believe, from Peter. And Peter and I discussed this earlier today because New York has been called into service to broadcast to the morning lesson of B'nai Baruch, Israel. We'll talk a little bit about what that actually means and who B'nai Baruch is and what's going on, why we're short-staffed. Our tech crew right now is one Regan Shulstone. That's it. We usually have 3 people back there. Tonight she's handling it all. Regan Shulstone from Baton Rouge via Dallas, Texas. And doing all of the moderating and running the class, producing it, is Shane from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. You can tell we're a pretty international crew around here. In the other lesson that I teach in the intermediate semester, we translate that one into Spanish. This one isn't. And during those Spanish translations, we have translators. One of them, the first time I met her, she was living in Japan. She speaks fluent Spanish because that's her native tongue, and now she's back in Mexico, and there are people flittering all about. Why? Well, I think you've heard about this concept of Congress, this physical coming together of people who study in B'nai Baruch. It's 8th through the 10th in August. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Don't flip up the screen yet, Regan. She's too quick for me here. We'll talk about what that's all about and why we're doing it. But that has everybody doing double and triple and quadruple service right now as we teach the class and also get ready to depart. All of the instructors from the Education Center, all of the people that you know or have met, possibly. If you're not, you will meet them. Instructors who also teach from Israel, they are flying over. I think they are leaving just about this time right now. They should be boarding their flights in Israel to fly over. There are people from Russia. There are people from Europe. There are people from Africa. There are people from all over the world, all South American countries, coming into New Jersey, actually, and through the 8th and 10th. We'll certainly be there. I will. I leave Thursday morning. So as you can tell, and if you look on your screens and take a look at where everybody's from, I've been looking at it and I've been just thrilled. I used to live in a place called Port Ludlow, Washington. I see somebody, Regan, from Coopville who just logged in. I was raised in Montana. I was born in Chicago, Illinois. So I've been around the world a few times in the military and in my career. It's wonderful to see all the names from London and from South Africa and from Trinidad. It's amazing when you stop and think about it, and it really has something to do with our lesson tonight, that all these people, men and women, different ages, different backgrounds, something is causing them, bringing them to ask the same questions. They may do it earlier in their life, they may do it later in their life, but there's a commonality that's happening here, and it's happening all over the world. In my intermediate lessons that are on Wednesday night this semester, we have students from India and from Pakistan and from Guam and from Africa, as well as Europe and South America and all of the states of the United States. Canada, Vancouver. It's amazing. What's happening? Why? What's going on? Actually, what's going on is covered in your last lesson, and I believe this lesson as well. Last lesson, as I understand it, from talking to Marcos. I'm not sure you've met Marcos yet. He's one of the instructors from Israel. He gave this class not this semester, but the semester previous to this. And I think that the lesson that you had last week was about the imbalance between our nature and something called bestowal, reality, the creator, the emanator. You see, what we're going to look at tonight is that imbalance from a little different perspective. Because the Kabbalists write to us that there's only one force in the universe, in reality. Not two, not multiple, one. We'll look at that, and we're going to read an article that speaks exactly about that. But if there's only one force, isn't it reasonable to assume that all around the world, from all these different races, religions, economic levels, education backgrounds, some single force is moving everybody to question, to ask a question, a simple question. Why am I here? I see strife in the world. I see economic injustice. I see suffering, sorrow. And I can't equate that to a loving creator. It just doesn't seem to me that there's one force, and that force is good and benevolent. He who does good to both the good and the bad always. But that doesn't seem how it is to me, does it? Maybe to you. Many religions, many philosophical paths will say something quite similar. Everything's good. There's only the Creator. Don't worry. Be happy. However they put it. But for most of us, that rings hollow. How can I look at the strife that's going on in Ukraine today, Russia, look at Israel and the Palestinian question, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan? I read someplace not long ago that there were 52 conflicts, armed conflicts, going on right now, as we speak. Men, women, and children killing each other. Over what? Well, greed, territorial conflicts, religious conflicts, philosophical conflicts. For whatever reason, there's this imbalance that's going on. Somehow, we see global warming, we see temperatures in ranges we've not seen before, we see climatic problems around the world. We see economic meltdown and terror as the financial systems wobble and become unbalanced to a degree that hasn't been seen in a long time. Now, this is not a class about the woes and the terrors and the worrisome state of the world. This indeed is a class of hope, of joy, because there is a way out. There is an answer. And that's why so many people from so many different walks of life are being called to this path called Kabbalah today, you included. Regan, myself, Shane running the class. We all have the same desire. Now, truly, if we take a look at this, and if we're honest with ourselves, we first have to say, maybe they wrote there is none else besides him, and maybe I'll say it every once in a while, but when the chips are down, when something somebody hits my car. I have a traffic accident. God forbid anybody's hurt. Let's just say it's a fender bender. What's my first reaction? There is none else besides him, and he is good and benevolent that does good to both the good and the bad always. I'm afraid to tell you the truth. That's not my first reaction. My first reaction is usually some kind of word that my wife shudders to hear me say. I'm upset. I'm mad. That idiot in the other car just creamed my car. As they say, God forbid somebody's hurt. But that's not my first reaction. There's only one force. I mean, why would that happen then? Doesn't make sense to me. And in fact, we can take a look. I'm going to use the Whatcom, Riggin, if we can. If we take a look at this, I'm here in my world. This is me. Actually, it's not a great representation, I know. I'm much more handsome than that, but we'll use this as our little caricature. And let's say I get up in the morning. Let's say I even get up in the morning and decide, I just keep it down at the Whatcom. Thank you. Let's even decide that as my feet hit the floor, I even remember, there's none else besides him, and he is good that does good. And then all of a sudden I get a telephone call from my boss. There's problems at work. Get in here quickly. Well, I jump in my car, but only after my wife or my family, let's put it that way. My family says, well, wait a minute. I thought today we were going to the beach. This is our day to have fun. Sorry, family, but the boss and see the job and the but now I'm not in a real good mood, and I jump in my car and let's say another driver cuts me off or runs into me, runs a red light. You see, I could even go on. Maybe my parents didn't raise me to be too patient. My wife's in the back room. That's Riggin Shillstone shaking her head going, patience? Him? Okay, so maybe I blame my parents. They could have done a better job raising me. There's all these things influencing me, and there's more, certainly. And all of a sudden, very quickly in my day, this notion of one force has just disappeared completely. There isn't one force. Come on, what are you talking about? There's my boss and my pressure for my family. There's the driver in traffic, and there's my parents. They didn't do a good job. I should have had more patience. There's all these things that are influencing me and pressuring me all the time. By this time, as you can see, even the way I've drawn it, although I didn't set out to do that, it's kind of, there's this shell around me that's influencing me, that is telling me how to react, how to think, what I should be doing, why I should be doing it. They're telling me what's going on. There's even levels above that, because I'm going to blame some of this, even the boss and something else, maybe on a government. We'll just put G-O-V. Government, mine and somebody else's. And we'll say other. I listen to the news, all these governments are forcing people to do this and that. There's a bank. Okay, so here's a bank. Financial institutions forcing. Well, they're forcing me to have to listen to my boss. And there's something over here, too. There's a military. I mean, they're forcing all sorts of things, and they are influencing all these other things. I can draw arrows upon arrows and make this very messy, but you get the idea. There's levels and levels and levels up here. And so there's this cloud above me. There's this shell that surrounds me. And my intention in the morning, to remember there is none else besides him, to remember the even the lesson that's coming up in the Education Center, to remember maybe to read a little bit or to ask a question on the forum. It's evaporated by now. I don't even remember that I got up in the morning and had some kind of goal. I'm being operated. I'm being pushed to and fro. And at this point, it seems to me that there's very little goodness here. Now, this is kind of a bleak picture, and yes, we can draw it a little bit better. Maybe the boss doesn't call, the family goes out for a picnic, it's a wonderful day. But let's just look at all the forces that our perception, our reality is based on. And what we're going to read about in my outline here that was given to me is from a book. We'll go just shortly into this. We're going to read just a little bit from a book called Shemati. I don't know if you've seen it before, this white book. A little hard to see, but you can see it pretty good. Has silver writing on a white cover, Shemati. It's, 300, 400 pages. Shemati, which is going to be the basis of our reading. Yes, your reading listed Kabbalah for the student. We'll take a look at that as well. And I'll kind of explain why we're looking at all these books, because it has to do with this picture. Very much it has to do with this. This picture of the way I perceive reality is there's many forces acting on me. And many of them aren't too pleasant. Good that does good to both the good and the bad always. Good and benevolent, I don't see it. Oftentimes I feel the opposite. Shemati 1. It is written, there is none else besides him. This means that there is no other force in the world that has the ability to do anything against him. And what man sees, that there are things in the world that deny the higher household. The reason is that this is his will. And if we think about this, first we have to understand where it comes from. Shemati in Hebrew means I heard. This book was published by Dr. Michael Lightman, the founder, the head, and the teacher for B'nai Baruch, the parent organization of this education center. Dr. Lightman was a student of Rabash. Rabash being B'nai Baruch, Baruch Ashlag. B'nai Baruch means sons of Baruch. Baruch Ashlag, Rabash, Dr. Lightman's teacher, was himself the primary student of probably this generation's greatest Kabbalist, Baal Salam. He was also his son, but that's to a large extent inconsequential. It's not a formality in Kabbalah that one follows the other naturally. There have been many Kabbalists with sons who didn't follow Kabbalah at all. There are some whose sons follow, but not that closely, whatever. It's not a guarantee. And so this relationship, that is Baal Salam and his son Rabash, was a very unique one. Rabash wrote about how hard it was. It is a hard path anyway, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but particularly if it's your parents you're a student of, because students of Kabbalists tend to spend every moment possible with the teacher, because the teacher is a source, a direct connection to this force called the Stol, or the Creator. And it's our work, which we'll talk more about, to do actions, yes, physical, but we're not talking physical actions right now. We're talking something called a spiritual action. Our goal is to come into balance. Remember, we started talking about how things seem so out of balance. It is this out of balance condition that brings about our possibility, actually, of correcting our nature to come into balance with nature in all forms, which allows us to then contact, in a very direct way, there is none else besides Him. In his time as a student, Rabash spent almost every moment he could with Baal Salam, his father, but also his teacher. And his teacher, Baal Salam, had other students as well. And they would have meals, for instance, which were great celebrations. They would have holidays. They would have lessons together. They would go for walks. They would do all sorts of things. And Rabash always had a notebook with him. And he would write what he heard his father say, Baal Salam, to him and others. This notebook was not the official account of the classes or the official writings of Baal Salam. Those, many of them, I think you've already studied out of Kabbalah for the student. What Rabash was writing down was a very much more internal dialogue that this great teacher was having with his students. And on his deathbed, he took the notebook that had been with him for years and years, in which he had written all of this wisdom that his teacher had said to the students. And he gave it to Dr. Lightman. And he said, take this and learn. It was in the 1990s that Dr. Lightman took that notebook, organized it, and published this book. This is the writings of Rabash as he heard his teacher speaking to his students. And the fundamental article for our class tonight and for Kabbalah in general, let's read it one more time, then we're going to look at it very deeply. Shemati 1, there is none else besides Him. It is written, there is none else besides Him. This means that there is no other force in the world that has the ability to do anything against Him. And what man sees, that there are things in the world that deny the higher household, the reason is that this is His will too. It's also important to tell you that Shemati is one of the most powerful sources and tools that we have. And we have these little Shemati books too in a pocket format. And they're there so that we carry them around with us in purses, in briefcases, in pockets. And at opportune times, as this cloud of distractions that we drew, the government, the boss, the family, the wife, the driver, the job, the bank, the whatever is going on, as it begins to dissipate and cloud my ability to remember the goal and why I'm here, we can remember the example of Rabash. Dr. Lightman says he remembers riding buses with Rabash, or trains, or even just walking in the park. He tells of waiting on a bus, and Rabash immediately took out his notebook. He didn't have it in this nice little form. He took out his notebook and he opened it just to a page. He didn't look for anything special. And he read one sentence. All that matters, for we will be lost even in the literal without assistance from the Kabbalists. To them we will bow down, and all those matters will be revealed to us. That's just what I opened it to. Rabash would read one sentence just to remind him, to bring him back from this cloud of forces, or what appears to be forces to us, back to the reality of what his life was about, the meaning of his life. For you see, if we go back to our picture, if the Kabbalists are correct, if we're not to believe, we are to attain That's when we say it's a scientific methodology here. What we're actually saying is that belief in the usual way, because somebody wrote it or because somebody said it, I believe. No. Here it is, we follow the directions, we follow the suggestions of the Kabbalists, and we attain a perception, a personal connection, attainment with the reality. Then it is real. Then I believe. I heard an example once. This is a little cough drop here, so when I speak a lot, it's just a little something. And I heard, if you want to see what belief is, faith. Let's see if I can do this without causing a big commotion. That's faith. I have faith that is going to fall. Why? Well, there's a force called gravity. I can sense that force, and it always works, at least here. Were you simply to tell me that there was a force of gravity and I had no experience of it, I wouldn't believe. Belief is an attainment, a personal experience of something. What we're told is that this experience, there is none else besides Him, is the goal. It's an available sensation for us to come to. And we'll talk a little bit about how that happens and the tools we have. I think you've probably gone over them. But if they are correct, the Kabbalists, and it's not just a mistake or a flowery phrase or even a lie, if it's true, what they are saying is that above this whole thing, all of our reality, there is a force. We'll call it Creator. We can also call it love. We can also call it bestowal. And it is, according to what we just read, the force which is activating everything. It is the force that is acting on all of these levels simultaneously. But we don't experience it that way. We instead experience these levels. The Kabbalists tell us what our goal is, our way forward, if you will, is actually to find ways to begin sensing this. And to see its action on all those other levels. To begin to see the hand in the puppet. Maybe some of you remember the old movie, and I'm going to forget the name, The Wizard of Oz, that's it. Where Dorothy and her dog are swept up in a storm and land in a place called Oz. And Oz is very magical and has witches and has flying monkeys, has a scarecrow that doesn't have a brain, and a tin man that doesn't have a heart. Reagan's giving me all the signs so I can keep this straight. Has a lion that doesn't have courage. That's all, right? Okay, so I've got them. There's all these characters, all these different forces at play. Toto, her dog, helps her out. She's standing in Oz, and all things are happening, and all she wants to do is get home. She wants to go back home. But all these forces are arrayed against her. And there's this booth that nobody notices, except her dog. And her dog runs over and starts barking. And then it grabs the curtain and starts pulling it aside. And lo and behold, there's a white-haired man in there pulling all these levers and turning dials, and whistles are going on. He's controlling all these forces. She has a desire that she presents. First, her desire presented to this force, the wizard, is for her friends. She wants them to have what they are missing. She doesn't ask for herself first. She asks for the scarecrow. She asks for the lion. She asks for the tin man. And they're all granted. It's only after that, when she's pressured and she asks, the wizard says, now what about you? Because she's only asked for the others. Love thy friend as thyself. For her, she got what she wanted when they received their fulfillment of their deficiencies. When she was pressured, she said, I just want to go home. And lo and behold, it was granted. You see, it's a nice little story, but there is something running the whole show. Running all of this, and it is our imbalance and our inability to sense this force, to have a conversation with this force, to see this force's intention, which is love and bestowal. He is good that does good always. It is that inability of us to sense this force that brings about all of the misery in the world, all the calamity. Is it correctable? Absolutely. Regan, can you run that first clip of Dr. Lightman, please? Let's listen to Dr. Michael Lightman discuss this force.
People do not think that there is a force in the world that is capable of inverting man's nature from bad to good. That's the whole problem. If people would know and would always receive that information to their minds, that there is a force that reforms, there is a force that reforms us. If we desire, it will make that correction to us. If they would hear more and more and more about it, then with every trouble that happens, they would start thinking, it's a shame that this force is not working, that we're not activating it. They would come closer to that force because the troubles prevail and increase, and no one knows how to run away from them, how to solve them, and we don't need to escape from them. We need to correct them. We need to realize that the troubles happen because of a good purpose, in order for us to invert them to a good thing. Meaning, our entire future depends on how much people will know that there is a way to correct the evil. The revelation of the wisdom of Kabbalah, the revelation of the upper force, the light that reforms, doesn't matter how you call it. That revelation to the world is a must. That is the only thing that will shorten the path and put us on the faster way to correction. And we must give that to the world.
There is a way. All the will all the desire is for one thing. It's to correct our nature, whatever that means. We'll talk about that too. It's to invert this nature, this out of balance condition. You see, what is promised to us is that if we can invert our nature from this desire to receive for self-benefit, the will to receive, if we can invert that to love thy friend as thyself, we have just reached a springboard, a jumping off place, a step on the way to home, the spiritual world, the world where everything is emanated from. If you take a look in this world, our world, there's a reason we're here. There's a reason that all these things seem to stand against us and take us away. And I'm sure that you've experienced it too. The best intentions, and they just disappear. Even in Kabbalah, it's the same, or even more intense. I'm going to remember to read none else besides him every morning. That is until next morning when the telephone rings and something pulls me away immediately and I forget. And I'm sure that the following morning I'll do it. And maybe I do. Maybe not. There's these ups and downs, these ins and outs. Now I know when I first started, long ago, one of my first demands or questions was, tell me why it has to be this way. I think I could have devised a better scheme. I mean, I wouldn't have had all this ups and downs, ins and outs, problems. Just give it to me. I mean, there's one force, there's one creator, he created everything, created so that I have it. I don't have to go looking for it. Seemed like a good deal to me, except for one thing. The desire of the Creator is said to be His revelation to us by our free will, without coercion. The forces we feel in this world are not actually coercion. They're there by design to push humanity to ask the question, what's the meaning of my life? And why is stuff running the way it is? If we will simply turn a millimeter towards Him, towards asking this question, towards having a desire to actually attain this sensation of none else besides Him, many things will change. Will that mean that there's no more challenges? No, it doesn't. Think of a child that's growing. I have a child in the household visiting right now. He becomes so mad when he can't do something. He's 1.5 years. He thinks he's pretty important because he can now walk. But there's these little gates up where there are stairs so that he can't fall down the stairs. They make him very angry. He thinks they should be removed. Of course he can walk. Look at me. I can't talk yet, but I can walk. Get the gate out of my way. You can see that he's upset. Well, what's happening here is that those who are older, a little more experienced, who have raised children and grandchildren before, they know that he has just started to walk, and they know this is beyond his ability. We'll give him a little bit of a nudge, but we won't let him hurt himself. Truly the same thing's happening with these nudges that humanity's getting. Now, what's also said is that they will become more stringent. They'll become more forceful if mankind fails to listen, just like a child, an obstinate child. I sincerely apologize to my parents because I was one. My wife is, again, in the tech room shaking her head vigorously. I would not listen unless there was a large enough 2x4 to remind me that I was not supposed to do something. Mankind is no different. It doesn't have to be that way, however. That force, benevolence and love, is there, and my love for this small child is that if he is going down the stairs, I'm grabbing him. I know the danger, and I'm not going to do it gently. I may do it quite forcefully. To hurt him? No. To impress him. I know better than he, but he doesn't know that yet. He doesn't have the experience. Humanity's the same. Throughout all of our readings, you've been reading Kabbalah for the Student, and by the way, the same article is in Kabbalah for the Student, page 189, that we just read from Shemati. It's under a different title. It's just titled differently, but it's the same article. It is written, there is none else besides him. In here, this is the textbook that we study from daily, all the students of Dr. Lightman. Great wealth of knowledge. Even if we want to do what we're talking about, even if this inversion of our nature, we have this desire. It wanes sometimes, but how do we go about that? There are 3 tools that we're told that we have at our disposal. They're there for you, just as they are for me. The books, Kabbalah for the Student, Shemati. This is the one that we use in the intermediate section. It's called Patiha, the science of Kabbalah, the technical study, so-called. We use this book. There's many books. But what's a book? A book allows us to connect with those who have the attainment and who have gone to this place of experiencing none else besides him. We, on the other hand, haven't gotten there. But we have a source that has. It's contained in the books. It's also contained in something called the Rav, the teacher, Dr. Michael Lightman for us. This is someone who has attained a certain level, has gone where we wish to go. Through our daily study with him, and most of the students, you'll come to that point yourself, we study daily with Dr. Lightman. All of the students from around the world come together. The students in Israel study with him physically at 3 a.m. in the morning. For us, we're broadcasting right now from Illinois. That's 7 p.m. daylight time for us. Others around the world, it's their own time frame. But there are students from every corner of the world that study, that open the books, and that listen to Dr. Lightman. Right there are the 3 elements. The books, the Rav, and the friends, or the environment. You can see your friends out here asking the questions, commenting, saying hello from around the world. But there's a secret. They're not just friends. You haven't met them perhaps yet. Hopefully you'll come to one of these congresses and have the great privilege of meeting them. I hope to see some of you in New Jersey here at the end of this week. If not, certainly I have heard that in about 6 months' time, January, February, there will be an international Congress. Wasn't that what Dr. Lightman said today? He was teaching from Mexico today, and he said that the Israeli Congress will be in about a half year's time. Yeah, generally in the end of January, 1st of February. Hopefully, get your passports ready. There is no experience that I know of that can equal being with 1,000, 10,000 others who have the same desire and the same yearning, the same questions that you have, coming together for one and only one purpose: to sense this one force and to come into equivalence with it, to make a request of that force to help us invert our nature from one of self-reception to one of bestowal. Do not do to another what you would not have done to you, and love thy friend as thyself. Now, one thing before we get off this diagram that I should just pop in here, it's in my notes. Most things in Kabbalah, when we first hear them, we naturally associate them with what we're commonly used to. And that's a big mistake. The Kabbalists speak with words that we might understand or think we understand, but their meanings are usually very much different. For instance, this whole scene of all of the influences that are on me, if we can have the Watcom rigging, here we go. You know what this is called? You know what this little figure down here is doing as these forces, the boss, the government, the family, the bank, driver, military, parents, on and on and on. That is referred to as idol worship. Or believing that there are other forces besides Him. There is none else besides Him. To worship idols means to believe that other forces are at work. You see how we can hear it one way and religions use it, others use it in a very derogatory way. But it's our lot, it's our beginning point. And it is as it must be. Now, this question must arise in all of us. It will. Let's assume for a moment that there is none else besides Him. This one unifying force that is good and benevolent. But I don't sense it that way. I want to, though. I have a desire to. Maybe it's not real big, it may be just a little one. It's a curiosity. I have a lot of other things going on in my life, but yes, I would like to sense that. But how can I? I mean, I'm by myself. I'm behind a computer screen. I saw somebody here from Montana. Hello, Montana. Somebody from Trinidad, London. Where else do we have? Ohio, Ghana. Ooh, long way. Illinois. Another Illinois. Let's see. Where else do we have friends from? New York, Chicago, Philippines. Yay, Philippines. New Zealand, USA, Dallas, Ottawa, Miami, Ohio, Maryland. On and on and on. Brazil. We have friends from all over the world. How can I make this effort? Well, I have the environment. I have all the elements. The books, the Rav, and the group. The books being the source to the connection to those men and women that have gone before and have actually done this, attained this sensation and connection and relation to the one force. They write to us. That is what they're writing. It's a travelogue. It's an invitation. It's a description. It's a how-to book that we can follow. We have the Rav, the teacher, the guide, Dr. Lightman. He's there as an intermediary. He's a guide. He's not the most important element. He's a critical element. But he's a guide. He's a connector between this source, this creator, this force, through the books, through the study, to us. And then there's the most important element, the friends, the group. We have it right here. We have the books. We have the instructor. The instructor in the EC instructs only from one perspective, allowed to by Dr. Lightman, in connection with Dr. Lightman. We're not flying solo here. We have the straight connection all the way to Baal Salam, to the Ari, to Moshe. And if we activate it, if we do something called a half shekel. Now, half shekel, how do I spell that? S-H-E-K-E-L, right, Regan? Yeah. Okay, a half shekel. Half shekel, we have a lot of people from a lot of different countries. In the U.S., I don't know what the exchange rate is right now, but it's about 25 cents, something like that. And it's a coin, but not here in Kabbalah. A half shekel means that we have this thing called an environment, a kli. A kli being a desire. A point in the heart for us. A small little desire that wishes to know something about why things work the way they do. Is this the only way it can be? How can we make it better? All these questions. What's the meaning of my life? Why was I born? It's too small to affect anything individually. But together, look at the force that's out here right now with the people from around the world, joining together in this class, this desire, this kli, this group. We're told that we cannot make these changes ourselves, but we can request. You see, we have to put in our half shekel, and that means that we must make the efforts to grow that desire to a degree that we call down, let's use a different color, we call down a force called the light that reforms. And that force, that light that reforms, changes this kli of ours, this desire. And in so doing, we make a shift upwards. Our desire grows, our demand grows, and we bring this light, this knowledge to the world. This knowledge is simple. Do not do to another what you would not have done to you. Love thy friend as thyself, in the real meaning of the words. Regan, get ready. We're going to show that next clip of Rav's, please. Yes? Now. Thank you.
A person has many things in life. His family, his job, all kinds of things he likes to do. A person has many things in life. How much should he neglect and leave all those things in order to be in a spiritual environment? To what extent? All those scrutinies about your connection with the society is an inner thing. You can be at work or at home or with your kids, with your relatives. It doesn't disturb each other. What influences me? This is what matters. For instance, you are now going back to Sicily, right after a few months of being here with us in Israel. So, you are still connected to us. Your heart is with us. We feel you close to us. And although you'll be there physically, with your family, at work, but spiritually you're influenced by us. Therefore, you'll even have, I hope, a greater scrutiny when you're at home, because all the family and relatives and friends and work around you, as if like an external confusion, but internally you'll be tied to us, so you'll always feel those clashes, those collisions. You'll clarify more things, you'll scrutinize things in order to advance. One who struggles advances. So, feel that and write to me. We'll see you soon.
When we begin to feel all of these forces, these tugs, these contradictions, it's a wonderful state. Then we put in our half shekel. Our half shekel is to question, to ask, what's going on here? What's behind the scenes? If there is none else besides him, what's going on? Does he want to try to tell me something? Is this a conversation that I'm just not able to hear, like the 1.5-year-old that's in my household right now? You'll listen sometimes. You'll catch a little bit of it, mostly from tone and body language. But there's a whole conversation going on that he is yet to be able to understand. It's the same for us. But our half shekel, this terminology, this biblical reference about putting in your half shekel, means that if I will put in my effort, the Creator will put in the other half shekel. And then this whole revelation of the Creator, this sensation of the force, the one force, none else besides him, comes to us. I think let's go to some questions and see what we have percolating out here. If I mispronounce your name, my great apologies. And you can correct me, please. Amy from Illinois, if I could humbly ask, you expressed your disappointment in your level of patience. You present as a very humble man, a very wise man. I appreciate your transparency. What are we to learn from your self-disappointment in your patience? Nothing. Not a thing. It's not important to learn, particularly for me. He won't. Seems kind of strange, doesn't it? What I hope to give you tonight is only one thing: a thirst for more. From where? The books, the Rav, and the group. For me personally, nope. I'm not that great. Don't worry about it. I'm sure there are many around who will tell you, don't listen to him. I'm here for one reason. And in fact, what we're doing in the Education Center is hopefully one and only one thing: to ignite and to grow this desire of yours, and to give you some directions. I'm a student just like you, no different. I study with Dr. Lightman on a daily basis. I study with others. I have a group, and I do what I'm told to do, like all of us. So, no, don't take anything from my experience. If anything, it's simply to invigorate your desire to continue on with your studies. Anthony from Ghana. Are the imbalances in life proportional to one's level of development or closeness to the Creator? Sometimes the greater the effort, the bigger the challenges. Why? Yeah, great question. Why? Why does it work that way? Let's look at a long-distance runner. I am not built as a long-distance runner, I can tell you that, but certainly in the military and other times, I had to train to run. I can remember in the military that we began by running, I think, 2 miles, maybe 3 miles, and when we first started, that was difficult. That was many years ago for me. But we got soon to a place where we could comfortably run 3 miles, and okay, now I thought the challenge will stop. I can make their 3 miles in the time that they said. Next morning, they came out with 60-pound packs and rifles, and they said, now, this is the test. Now run 3 miles in this amount of time. They're carrying something like 80 pounds. The challenges continued to grow. Why? Our abilities continued to grow. And without more resistance, without a greater challenge. The ability to run or to lift weights or to keep an intention won't grow. Everything about this level of ours, this world, is actually finally devised for one reason, one purpose and one purpose only. You and your spiritual progress. That's it. And anything that seems not to be in accord with that, we believe is a force against us, or it's our inability to change our perception and see what's behind that, what the purpose is. The challenges will get more and more, although they may change nature. I'm not saying it's going to be bad. Now imagine, for instance, you were asking about their growing. Yeah, they'll grow, but it's not that you will be uncomfortable in the usual way. Let's say that you're studying now twice a week, and you're reading a few days a week in between there. You're picking up Shemati, which is the recommendation, and periodically during the day just opening your pocket version and reading. I just opened it, and this is the meaning of Rabbi Shimon ben Mashiri. Matter means without reason and knowledge. An ear that heard on Mount Sinai will not steal. I'm reading a little bit. I don't know what it means, and I don't even have to. I have to put in my half shekel. I have to make my efforts, and I'm doing well. I'm going along pretty good. I'm hoping that the car doesn't break and the boss doesn't get mad and my job keeps going okay, because these are things that I think might knock me off and take me away from the study. And I happen to be with a couple of blokes who are friends of mine, and we stop in at the corner pub, and they have lotto tickets. And we buy one, just for fun. We'll have a pint together, we'll buy a lotto ticket, and we win. We win $10 million. What kind of challenge is that now? Think about it. Anything that can take us off the goal, that can take us away from this structure that we build to study. Even 2 days a week right now in the fundamentals lesson can be difficult to keep. You all know this. To remember, or something else comes up. The challenges will grow, but they'll grow as your ability grows, so that you will run farther, run faster, perceive more. But you must choose it by your free will. The free will is between these contradictory forces. In my half shekel, I put in by my desire. If my desire wanes, I'm in trouble. Then I need the group. Then I need the influences from the outside not to allow me to turn away. Challenges will continue. But you actually will come to a place where you will be grateful for the challenges. When two or more are gathered in His name, there is love. That's why the group experience is so important. Karen from Ohio. Yes. The rod, the books, and the group. The group being two or more. Because this is a reciprocal act. If you think about it, what we're saying is that our nature, our inbred nature, how we were made, is called will to receive for self-benefit. We can say it this way. Right now, there's me. And there's this thing surrounding me called ego. It's also called Pharaoh. It's also called will to receive. And I am looking at the world, no matter what I believe right now, as being out there and for one reason: to provide me pleasure. Will to receive. Opposite in quality to none else besides Him. Bestowal, love. Somehow, I have to figure out how to invert all of this to instead wish the vector, the concern, to be for anyone else, everyone else, eventually to the entire world, to bestow. For me, it actually comes to a place where I disappear. The Kabbalists call it becoming a black point. My desire, my whole desire, becomes similar in form to the Creator. That is bestowal, the opposite of our nature here. How can I do that? Well, as long as I'm encapsulated like that, I don't have any place to bestow to. I'm sunk. Anything that comes out of there is egoistic. I need at least another, called a friend, someone with the same desire, because we can close this circuit in a very real way when my concern is for my friend only and my friend's concern is for me only. Here is the Creator. Now, think about it in terms of the world. Or let's just say B'nai Baruch. B'nai Baruch as an organization has 1 million, 2 million, something like that. Points in the heart all over the world. You. Imagine all of these connecting in that way. Bestowal, desiring love thy neighbor as thyself, wanting only your success, and they only wanting your success. You see this brocade that we're starting to build here? Or the kli? This also has another name. Soul. This is what we're going to New Jersey for. This is what the meeting that just happened in Mexico was for. That's what happened in, where else was Dr. Lightman? Ecuador and Chile. That's what will happen in January or February in Israel. What is this? Coming together to build these connections. The kli, the common soul. That's what we're doing. It begins at least with 2. But the Kabbalistic recommendation is for 10. A group of 10. Or many groups of 10. You see what's going to happen here. You all are extraordinarily bright. These groups of 10 then are going to connect. Christine from the U.S., but if our concern is focused only on a friend, then doesn't that behavior yield us to be seen as a doormat and not as a strong person? Depends how you define that, I would assume. There's a large problem for all of us in that what we're speaking of in all of these classes is something called spirituality. We have to begin in this world. We can't ignore it. I mean, it would be foolish to say that I can walk out in traffic because I'm only interested in spirituality. I'm going to be like a bug on a windshield. It's going to end. My chance at spirituality for this iteration is going to be wiped out by a Mack truck. I can't do that. I live in this corporeal world and I have to obey corporeal laws. Have to. Does that mean I have to be a doormat? No, it doesn't. Does that mean I can let my neighbor come over and, I don't know, steal my dog? No. We're not talking about that. We're talking about something spiritual. I keep using the name friend. Who's a friend? Someone else with a point in the heart, a desire to reveal the Creator, to be able to do what the Creator does. Between friends, that's where the spiritual laws come into play. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not commit adultery. But again, remember what we said early on. You have to be careful of these words. They don't mean what we think they do. It's not talking about letting my neighbor come over and steal my dog. I'll stop him. And if my neighbor comes over to give me harm, I'm going to stop him as well. That's not what Kabbalah is about. On the other hand, for those with a point in the heart, those who desire to reveal the Creator between them, there can be nothing as strong as to love your friend as yourself. Try it. Even come too close to the concept of it. What does that mean? That means I annul myself. I disappear in the equation. Only my friend equates. What strength? Now, you say a doormat. I say love and bestowal. To those who wish me harm? No. Right now, to a friend. Eventually, to everyone in the world, but that's down the road. Karen from Ohio, we learn by what we experience, so the more we desire to connect with the Creator, then the more we can discern for ourselves how we can change ourselves to climb the ladder. Yes, this is true. We have to be extraordinarily careful, Karen, about our ability to lie to ourselves. Not you. I'm talking about me. You see, one of the things that Kabbalah says, which is disconcerting, at least at first, is there's only one thing in the entire world that has to change. Just one. Me. I'm the only thing that has to change. I have an ability, this thing called I, this thing called Pharaoh, ego, has a sneaky way of lying to us and believing that it knows best. That's where we have to be very cautious. And that's why we have the guide, Dr. Lightman. Because I can fool myself into thinking I know where I'm headed and how to get there. He's been there before. So he may yank me up by the collar and say, that's the wrong way, young man. Turn away from there. Go this way. But eventually, yes, it is said a man will learn from his soul. But first we have to develop that soul. Let's see. What have we missed, Riggin? We are out of time. One more. How does your last statement about only loving friends address the 52 arms conflicts? It doesn't resolve or contribute to resolving them? Amy from Illinois. Yes, it does. Absolutely does. But again, remember what I just said. Am I required to allow an armed combatant to come and kill me? No. I am not. In fact, I am forbidden to allow that. This is about an attitude, though. The hatred is specifically against love and bestowal. You didn't hear me say don't protect yourself. I did not agree with the statement about becoming a doormat. But it's the attitude of why and with what desire. The desire to end someone else, to control someone else, to ridicule someone else, to be feeling superior to somebody else, or to take something that someone else has? No. The woes of the world, all 52 conflicts, and their salvation are contained in. There is none else besides Him. And the conversation that is attempted to be had with us through these kinds of blows and challenges, if we can learn who is behind and what is being said to us, everything will come back into balance with nature, and that will correct itself. What an honor to be with you. It's my great honor, and I hope to meet you sometime in the near future, maybe in New Jersey, August 8th through the 10th. Can you pop that one up? There you go. One Kabbalah convention. I fly out Thursday morning. I teach Wednesday night, fly out Thursday morning, back Sunday night to teach again the following week. If any of you are in the area, please make every effort you can go to New Jersey. Also plan to get your passport ready, no matter where you are in the world, and meet us in Israel in January or February. Announcements. Your next lesson will be Wednesday, August 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Or you can watch the Pacific Time Zone class at 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. That's next Wednesday, this coming Wednesday. We'll have classes, and then the instructors will fly out for New Jersey. The North American One Convention is this weekend. If you can't be there in person, you can watch all the lessons on www.cobb.tv. To find the schedule, go to www.kabbalah.info/convention. Don't miss this opportunity to be connected, whether in person or virtually. Dear friends, thank you very much. A great pleasure. See you sometime in the very near future. Good night.
אשרי הנער שהשכיל לשמוע בקול רב, בקול רבו. אשרי הנער שהשכיל לשמוע בקול רב, בקול רבו. אשרי העם שככה לו, אור הזוהר יורד דרכו. אשרי העם שככה לו, אור הזוהר יורד דרכו. אשרי התך והזקן, גם שכינה יחד לחבקם. אשרי העם שככה לו, אור הזוהר יורד דרכו. אשרי העם שככה לו, אור הזוהר יורד דרכו. אשרי בת מלך שזכתה לשלום בית ושלווה. אשרי בת מלך שזכתה לשלום בית ושלווה. אשרי העם שככה לו, אור הזוהר יורד דרכו. אשרי העם שככה לו, אור הזוהר יורד דרכו. שככה לו, אור הזוהר יורד דרכו. אשרי העם שככה לו,